ladies and gentlemen. Today we will be taking some notes. You will find these notes as usual underneath the classwork tab on the Google Classroom. They are labeled Notes 11-4. So if you open those up, you will see, again, the link to my YouTube channel as well as the Google Slides. If you open that up, again, you'll see, like we have been doing, the red text boxes. You'll need to click them and type in the word that fills in the blank. If at any point you need to pause this video so you can type, or if you need to rewatch, I highly recommend it, as you do have an exit ticket to demonstrate what you learned today. With that being said, we'll go ahead and get started. So these are the first notes that we're taking for this unit, our prehistory unit, the beginning of human society. We've begun to discuss this with our mankind episode, as well as the episode of becoming human, which we watched the last few days. And it began to introduce how humans evolved, as well as how historians and archaeologists have put together the few pieces that we have to begin to create our shared history. So the first thing we're going to discuss, what is history? History is the study of past events, particularly human events. A historian is a person who researches, studies, and writes about the past. Historians are mainly concerned with the connected stories and the development of ideas and research of past events in relation to the human race, but will study all history and time. So while, for the most part, they are concerned with human activity, they can also study the environment, how the earth has developed, and we saw this in our video Becoming Human, how we studied how Africa was once a tropical rainforest and became a savanna. We can also study animal life. Again, from Becoming Human, we saw that hippos once populated the middle part of Africa when it was a tropical rainforest, but have since died out as the climate changed, while also being mainly concerned with the history of the human race. There are several types of questions historians might ask. What happened? When did it happen? Who was involved? How and why did it happen? And they will hope to answer these questions using primary and secondary sources, which we talked about last unit. What is archeology? Archeology is the study of human activity in the past through the recovery and analysis of the evidence that has been left behind by past human populations. Examples of these pieces of evidence can be artifacts, architecture, biofacts, and cultural landscape. All of these examples are primary sources. And we saw this recovery and analysis, again, in our video, Becoming Human, when we discovered bones of Salam, one of our early ancestors, as well as Lucy, and other human and animal remains. Archaeologists are the scientists who study human history by digging up human remains and artifacts. Again, we saw examples of these archaeologists in our Becoming Human video. These artifacts that we're looking for, we also saw examples of when they dug up the stone tools that early humans used. What types of questions do archaeologists ask? They might ask, what is this item? We saw that in our Becoming Human video. when they dug up the rocks that they thought were originally just rocks. But upon looking and investigating further, they discovered that they were in fact early tools used by early man to cut meat and get food. They might ask how old it is, and we'll talk about how they figured that out in just a little bit. How might it have been used? And what was it found near? This can be particularly important as we look at early humans. For example, we found hippo remains near Salam's remains, which told us that Salam in fact lived in an area with a lot of water, since that's where hippos live. This was new information, as again, we previously thought that Africa was a desert savanna, but in fact, we now know that it was once a tropical rainforest. So these things will be important as archaeologists and historians try to learn about the Paleolithic and Neolithic living patterns. Now, you might not have heard of anthropology before. We haven't really seen too many examples of that, unlike history and archaeology. Anthropology is the study of human societies, so they try to look at groups of people as a whole. Examples of this would be the Mayans and their civilization in Mexico and Central America, the Romans in Europe, and many more. Even though anthropology and archaeology are similar, there are differences. Typically, archaeologists work with prehistoric artifacts, fossils, and early humans. And we saw this in our Becoming Human video. While anthropologists work with early and modern societies. So archaeologists focus mostly on the prehistory, the Paleolithic, Neolithic eras. Anthropologists work with early, so they can look at Paleolithic and Neolithic societies, but they can also look at societies closer to our time, Mayans, Romans, and even modern society, our current society, anthropologists can also study. Since early humans haven't left us with written records, anthropologists are challenged to find ways to answer their questions. A lot of their questions will focus on the 6 social institutions, which we talked about last unit. The 6 social institutions are government, economics, education, family, religion, language, and art. And so without some of these written records, it can be really difficult for anthropologists to get a full view of the human societies. And for this reason, they will mostly focus on more current societies and even modern societies. What types of questions do anthropologists ask? Well, ask, what are the ancestral roots of human society? Who are the first humans? And how did early humans live? As again, they are concerned with the society as a whole. What were their beliefs? What were their values? How did they raise children? Did they live in large groups or small groups? Things like that. But either way, historians, archaeologists, and anthropologists must always have evidence to represent history. Again, this is something we talked about last unit. And as you can see from these descriptions, evidence is going to be very important to all 3. Now, the evolution of humans. This again is going to be based on the information and evidence that historians, anthropologists, and archaeologists have found. And again, we are looking at this through a scientific lens. So please be aware of that as we move forward. You are always encouraged to share your beliefs and take this information in as you see fit. However, while we work together, I'd like for you to try and think about this from a scientific point of view. Historians believe that humans divided from the same genetic line as gorillas about 8 million years ago and from chimpanzees 5 to 7 million years ago. This means that man did not evolve from monkeys, but both man and monkeys share an ancestor. So at some point in our history, our great-great-great-great-great-great-grandparent is both the grandfather of humans and monkeys. We did not evolve from monkeys. We were never monkeys. We share a common ancestor, but we did not evolve from monkeys. Monkeys are just our very hairy cousin. Scientists have dated the earliest hominid fossils, or fossils showing that they walked on 2 feet, to between 6 and 7 million years ago. Now, how did they figure that out? They'll use 2 different types of dating. Relative dating, which has nothing to do with actually dating or family members. This is the science of determining the order of past events without determining their absolute age. In contrast, absolute dating or carbon dating uses the naturally occurring carbon to determine the age of materials up to 60,000 years ago. So relative dating gives us an estimate where it would fall on a timeline about, but it cannot tell us very specifically when someone lived or when an animal was around. Absolute dating is more specific and can give us a range of up to 60,000 years. This comes from the carbon. Carbon is present in all living things, and it decays at a measurable rate. Archaeologists measure the carbon in remains of plants and or animals to date excavation sites. Carbon is not accurate to very specific dates, but can provide a range of time for a find. Carbon dating is not going to tell you a person died January 27, 64 BCE. It'll give you a range. This person might have died between 100 BCE and 10 CE. It'll give you a range of time. This is due to the fact that remains are often very degraded, and it can be difficult to get specific numbers. But absolute dating or carbon dating is going to be more specific than relative dating. Migration also plays a factor in remains that we find. Migration is the movement of a group of objects, organisms, animals, or people. Now, I'd like for you to brainstorm who migrates, who or what moves from place to place. Come up with 2 examples. And then why do they migrate? What will cause a group of people to leave one area for another? What will draw people into one area? And it doesn't necessarily have to be people. You can also think about animals that might migrate. Why do animals leave one place for another? What would make one place more appealing to an animal over another? You will see this map on your exit ticket, so I want to quickly discuss it. If we use the key down in the bottom left corner, you will see what the different colors mean. The blue represents Ardipithecus, which you guys read about in your weekly reading, otherwise known as Artie. You'll also see that the purple dots represent Australopithecus. And then the orange represents the beginning of the Homo species. Homo just means same, or 2, meaning we walked on 2 feet. And as you can see, the blue dots, or Ardipithecus, are located further to the west of the Awash River and the Yardley Lake. And then slowly we begin to see clusters of purple Australopithecus and orange Homo species beginning to gather around the Awash River and the Yardley Lake. Thinking about migration and what might cause people or animals or organisms to migrate, I want you to be aware of the different benefits and why these groups might have moved closer to a body of water like the Awash River and the Yardley Lake. Use this information as well as your information from your skill builder and information from the movie the other day to help you answer that question on your exit ticket. If you have any questions, please let me know. Also, feel free to rewatch any part of this video if you missed anything or need to go over something again, as that will be very helpful to filling out your exit ticket. That is it for our notes today. I will talk with you soon.